done? Been a minute.
Told you we were coming back.
Yeah, we always have a ton of content we've got to go through, but we wanted to put this out there because, of course, we've been asked this, I think, a couple of times, but what does it mean to have an emotional connection? I think it's pretty deep, and I'm sure we could take it to a very deep level, so we'll try to keep it simple.
Simple. I can keep it simple.
Okay, well, what is an emotional connection to you with me?
Well, that's a loaded question.
I'm sure.
It's a loaded question.
I'm sure.
We are one, and but we are two.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to answer.
It's hard to answer. There it is. We are one, but we are two.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
We go through, I think
That's the oddest thing to try to...
Yeah. But I think we go through our ups and our downs, and then we go to our ins and our outs when it comes to emotions and sharing them with each other. We reach a spot where we feel safe sharing that, and then we reach a spot where we don't feel safe doing that. And we find a space where we stuff our emotions. Then we find a space where we gotta release our emotions. It's like, I think the toughest part is understanding our emotions between ourselves and then, or within ourselves, and then sharing it with the other person. Yeah.
First.
Because a lot of things that get triggered, we think I think Sherry triggers me, but literally it's not her triggering me. And you taught me that the trigger was mine. I just happened to make it seem like you activated it, but it's actually one that I own.
Well, it's easy because we're together all the time. We're together all the time. So it's easy to place any kind of blame or any kind of fault on you because you're here with me all the time, where the kids come and go. Right? But it's easier to say, well, if you wouldn't have swept the stairs, I wouldn't have been triggered.
But
about my wicked stepmother who made me clean while my stepsisters went out.
True. Do you think that we I don't think we could say we're good at it, but I don't say
at
that
what?
We're at experience finding a way to share our emotions with each other.
We're not good at that.
It's not that we don't want to be though. I don't think it's that we don't want to be. So
we're not good at that.
No.
It's fine. I mean, nobody's perfect at it. We tend to hold things in and keep things down in order to not trigger the other person. As human beings, we do it all the time. As human beings, we tend to, especially the one that we're connected to, we feel that they don't want to be bothered with our internal issues or what we're going through emotionally or mentally. Some of us feel like, well, then hell, we're connected. He should know, or she should know. She should feel that. He should feel it. He knows I'm going through something that he won't ask. So I'm going to hold it in until he asks. We do that. We do it all the time. And then we feel like they don't care enough to ask. So then that's a whole process, right? And then comes the acceptance. This happens in marriage, in relationships all the time. The acceptance part is accepting the fact that you're not going to have that type of intimacy, not physical intimacy, but the intimacy of communication. And then we get into relationship and we accept that. Next thing you know, it's 20 years later, and you got a husband and wife, parents and grandparents who are sitting in rocking chairs and just have accepted their life for the past 25 years. So a lot of people have stayed together, just accepting the defeat, acceptance that the way that they have pictured, or the thought process of how life would have been ideal for them. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
The ideal life of what would have made their journey a little bit happier, and then accepting that those things after periods of conversation aren't going to happen, but you still want to be with that person. You accept the fact that it's just not going to happen. It's just not going to be there. And then this is how we end up in toxic relationships down the line, because then once the kids are gone and everybody in the house is gone, then you're stuck with each other and all this resentment and all this turmoil.
Yeah.
Because you hold stuff down for so many years and so long. Parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, I mean, you see it happening. It's different when there's an emotional connection, because now you find yourself in spiritual connection, and you have to, now it's another layer of uncovering, when you really haven't uncovered the human 3D part of it yet. Then somebody comes in with a spiritual emotional connection on top of that, and it just blows the hell up. It just blows the hell up, because it makes you want to shut down, because there's so much that goes on, especially when there's an emotional spiritual connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so much that goes on and needs to be unraveled with that, when it's hard to unravel the human 3D part of it. So union isn't easy by any way, shape, or form. Having that emotional connection isn't easy at all. And 3D things still come into play. It still happens, right? I can remember when you and I actually met, and we were in person and we were talking, and I had said to you that my envision of, I forget what kind of relationship I used, because I didn't want to use the word spiritual. I may have used the word emotional, right? Because I didn't want to freak you out with the word spiritual, right? I didn't know what a twin flame was back then. I still don't want to know now. But didn't know what that was, but I had it. You know what I mean? I had it. I knew it was in my soul. I knew that emotional connection was in my soul. And I remember talking to you and saying, in this connection that I've envisioned, that I've dreamed my whole life, real life 3D things can never break that. The bills, the finances, the house, the laundry, the kids, any of the 3D things that literally will tear up a relationship, right? Has no business in an emotional connection, right? There should always be a breaking point of, okay, we have done enough 3D thing today. We need to be in our spiritual or emotional connection, right? Which should always be nurtured first. That should be taken care of first. When what in reality happens is we do it oppositely. We tend to take care of everyday 3D stuff first. We make sure that the bills are done. We make sure that the house is straightened up, that the dishwasher's empty, that the laundry's done, and that everything's set up. And we're so busy nurturing our 3D lives that our emotional connection the spiritual connection goes unnurtured. And we run across that an awful lot talking to people, that they're really stuck in that 3D bullshit, and it destroys it'll destroy a union. You can't destroy the connection. I was about to use the word connection. You can't destroy that. So then what happens is a lot of people who are connected emotionally, spiritually will part ways because they can't handle, one or the other isn't getting it. That the emotional spiritual connection has to be nurtured, what happens is 3D emotion comes in. Right?
What's the difference between 3D emotion and this connection emotion?
Well, 3D emotion is going to have your guilt, your jealousy, your anxiety, your thought process. Mm-hmm. Your 3D connection is going to have your thought process. And that's how a lot of people are out there having affairs too. Well, if I can't get it at home, I'm going to get it someplace else. If I'm not getting my hand held at home, I'm going to need human touch. I'm going to find human touch. I need to find that. If people are finding that they're not getting what they need at home, they're going out and getting it someplace else. And what happens is it makes it harder on the emotional connection, because now you have even a bigger mess, because you have this emotional connection that's being affected. So now you're separated, there's been infidelity, it's a hot mess, but you're still connected. And that unconditional, I want to use the word love, is always going to be there. Mm-hmm. But now it's overridden by human emotion, hate and jealousy and resentment and all those things that come into play. And then, we watch them go through the guilt of, well, maybe I should have, maybe if I would have done this, and maybe if I would have done that, maybe if I would have done this. And sometimes that takes years of a process to go through your mind of what I could have done wrong, or what they could have done wrong, or what they have done to contribute to this, right? Falling apart of, we're watching people come out of union in bitter ways. And it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. The key is to nurture your union first. That's the key. And when that doesn't happen, it goes in the shitter. It just goes in the shitter. There's no other way to put it, right? And the thought process of, well, if the bills were paid, if all of our business was taken care of, then we have time to cuddle. Then we have time to hold hands. Then we have time to just be with each other. It isn't happening. That's not happening first. And if that happened first, then everything else would fall into place. There would be no struggle. The bills and all that stuff, it would help it fall into place. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Absolutely.
So so now you're nurturing your union, and everything else is easier and will fall into place easier, right? But then the other person seems to flip.
I'm gonna use me for an example, because I think it's important for you to hear, and I think it's important for you to hear. So, what happened and what's happening, is a continuous cycle. My emotions growing up, I didn't have anybody to share them with.
Right.
Right? And I lost not just one parent, but both parents to survival. Mm-hmm. They had to go and focus on making sure that we had roof over our head. They had to go and focus on, all of these things that are human things. But that left me with no space or no one to share my emotions with.
Right.
So when that shows up, I'm going to follow in the behaviors of what I see. Mm-hmm. And it's not intentional. And it doesn't mean I don't have emotions and I can't share emotions, I've never learned how. So when things like that arise, I know that the love that I'm supposed to be getting can be dropped instantly for survival.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that creates a wound in me, and it's one that is never going to be not something I'm not trying to put into healing, or something that I'm not going to try to speak from. And I'm not going to be the best at it because I don't know what it looks like. So knowing that I can open up and say, I'm not doing this intentionally, I'm doing this out of habit, or I'm not sharing what I feel out of habit, or I'm not being nurturing out of habit. I'm saying it because in this space, I was kind of abandoned in this space.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're experiencing is not just me abandoning you, I'm abandoning myself. And I know how to put those things aside because I see that those things were important, and that's how I was raised. So what's happened is from the connection path of what happened, the connection that it connects to us, in the space where I want to be emotionally there for you or have an emotional connection with you, I can only follow what I've seen, but I'm trying to break the spell, because it is a spell. It's not what is. It's not permanence. It's not, I don't want to wake up any day and feel like I have to resent you because I had to hold something inside.
Right.
I know that that's something I've done my whole life. It's when we come into this connection and the intensity of this connection, my expectations are that you understand this about me.
Mm-hmm.
Where the truth is, you don't understand this about me because you weren't there to see what that did to me. So in a lot of ways, I still get to say, that's my alone space. So when my emotions are there and I'm trying to connect, I actually do experience that broken space. So then you do experience a disconnect that may feel physical, a disconnect that may feel emotional, a disconnect that may feel, it's never going to disconnect spiritually, but all of those other ones may end up suffering because of something I'm not opening up and saying, hey, I'm not meaning to be closed off, but what happened to me was closed off.
That's a part of your story, right?
It's a part of my story, but a part of the story that if I'm not putting into the healing and I'm not putting it in or looking at it from outside of my story, I become a part of that story again. Mm-hmm. That's where the thought patterns show up. That's where the thought process shows up. And that's what stops my emotions from coming out, because there was nobody there to share my emotions with. So literally I had to tell myself, nobody wants to know that. Nobody wants to understand. Nobody wants to see that part of you, because there was nobody there when I was experiencing it.
Do you think it's harder for the divine masculine or the male, or let's not say male or female because they're.
I believe it's
divine. I think it's. Do you think it's harder for the masculine to be vulnerable and be able to speak about their emotional state and their, because of the way that most, I'm going to say most, males are raised to be the strong breadwinner, go out, make the money, come home, pay the bills, drink a beer, and the traditional family setting. Do you think it's easier for a divine masculine to fall into that and not be vulnerable and just be the hard one? Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. The divine masculine was the one that just told you, I follow the story. It was telling you my masculine follows the story. The divine masculine would stand back and look at that and not judge it and say, this is where the wound comes from, and this is what's wounding, probably. This is the wounding that's happening to me, but it's probably impacting you because we're connected, and it's probably showing up to you because we're connected.
That's an emotional connection. That's the spiritual connection. That's the emotional connection.
The divine masculine steps in to help you understand why that connection, it looks like that, or why that connection shows up that way for emotions. But
it's natural for the divine feminine to just be an acceptance of that. Does that make sense?
Yes, because the divine feminine in this regard would look and go, okay, this was a response to this happening. to this, and there is acceptance there. But even if you come towards me with that acceptance of knowing that about me, I'm going to still be leery of sharing all of my emotions because there wasn't a divine feminine there to do that at that time. That's when my divine masculine has to step in and say, it's okay to have an emotional connection. But there's a part of you that always wants to be scared or wants to look for rejection or wants to, and then you're going to say the wrong thing so you can be right. So literally, if you like, hey, are you feeling okay? Yeah, I'm good. And you know instantly I'm lying.
Yeah, right.
So it automatically, it's like I'm rejecting not sharing my emotions with you, which you feel rejected. And then you're going to look at all the ways that I'm rejecting you. And they're going to hurt you. And it's not intentional. It's the unconscious effect of what emotional connection can give you. And it's hard to come into acceptance that that unconscious reaction is something we're all going to have to realize that we have in this connection, because for a long time we were connected from when we got here. But the separate stories that we endured, there's a lot of it where a lot of that was absent. You probably didn't have your father when you really needed him, and your emotions probably didn't connect. So here I am trying to be in that, and I'll never be able to fill that hole. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So even if I try to share it, it's never going to feel like enough. Because that part could be a wound that you have that I'll never be able to fill. I'll want to fill it, but I'll never be able to. Like you'll never be able to fill my mom. You'll never be able to fill the holes that are missing there. This is, to me, the strongest part of our connection, is our emotional connect. And you could see it long before I could. I couldn't see why I was acting like you could see it clearly. But you can also see that it doesn't mean that it doesn't aggravate you. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have resentment towards me. It doesn't mean that you're not going to want to just punch me dead in my face. It's not going to mean that. It's going to mean that those things are relevant, but it's also going to be that it wasn't something that happened because of you. It's something that happened to me.
To you.
Does that make sense? So if I want to open my emotions, or you want to open your emotions, we both look for the absent space before we look for the being there space. And I believe
it happens a lot with we're watching people go through this a lot once they even come into union, getting into union. It's happening to people trying to achieve getting into union. It's already taken them out before they can even get there. It's already taken them out. But halfway through the journey, it's taking them out.
It tries to take us out.
It tries to take us out on occasion.
Yes, we're not kidding you. This is a very real thing, and I think we get it.
Yeah,
we know how to sabotage each other in ways that we don't even mean to. But we're still here showing you that it can be something that you could keep. You just have to keep standing there because you're just not used to somebody being in that space.
It happens. It happens a whole lot. We don't want that to happen anymore.
Well, we understand that it does, and I love you for still standing by me when it does, and when I'm not connecting to you in that way I should be, and it's not that I'm not.
We both do that. I mean, we both do that.
But it doesn't mean that it's not an internal fight for me. I don't want to do that to you, and I see it, but there's the space there where you play it out in your mind how it's going to go, and that's the part where we get rejected, and that's the part that we reject each other in.
It's expectation that doesn't get met. You know what I mean? And what we do as when we have expectations, I hate that word. It just sucks. But we put as human beings, we put expectations on things, and it comes to the point where people, especially people, and then when those expectations aren't met, then we do take that as rejection. As human beings, we do take that as rejection, right?
Yeah.
We see it all the time playing out with even in the reality stuff that we watch. On purpose, don't judge. That we're watching it to the point where there's just there's a drive, right? There's a drive to want to be everything the person you feel expects, right? And then there's a certain amount of expectation, and we're watching when those expectations aren't met. And there's one particular scenario that's coming to mind where, the one person was promised all these things. They come to this country, promised all these things, and they didn't get it.
Right.
And they just got the regular human being, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not what they were wanting or expecting, right? And it turned ugly.
Yes.
Quickly.
Very.
When those two people, I feel, really were connected. They really were. They are connected.
Mm-hmm.
But it was that amount of expectation that they had towards one another, where, the one said, they'll love me because I'm me and who I am, right? And accept me for who I am. And the other person comes along and says, this person's going to give me all these riches and all these material things.
Right.
And when the two came together, the expectation exploded. And it became ugly. So what happens in
right,
you know what I mean? And I'm not sure that that's healthy either.
Keep freezing.
I don't know. It keeps glitching. But I don't know if that's healthy either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we do, as human beings, we tend to do that.
I guess in order to have a very open emotional connection, you have to share the emotion behind the not met expectation.
Right.
I guess we'll have to see. We'll run it back and see.
Glitchy.
Yeah. So how do we communicate in the space of sharing those emotions that come from not having expectations met? That's the really dangerous place in connection, because we grew up not sharing those. We grew up not opening up to those. And we don't even know that's how we're meant to connect.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully this really gave you some insight, or at least gave you a place that you probably should start looking when it comes to having an emotional connection. Who have you ever had one with? Is it snowing? Wow.
It's March in Ohio.
But spring solstice just...
Probably going to have 12 inches of snow. And it'll rain tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
But Sunday, it's going to be like 90 degrees.
Go figure.
Weekend in Ohio.
Yes.
Welcome to Ohio.
Love you guys. Hopefully you like the video. Hit the subscribe button.
Yeah.
Need us.
Do that.
Also, you can find us in our groups. Twin Flame Work Group. By Relationship Reinvented.
Want to run a weekend special? Want to do 5 for...
Yeah, but let's make it emotionally charged.
Okay. All right.
If you want to do the work.
All right. We'll do a root camp special, 5 for 500.
Okay.
Just for the weekend.
Yes.
If you're watching this on Friday, the 22nd of March, 2019, and you inquire through the weekend, we're not doing many full root camps anymore. We're coming off the schedule for that. But
yeah.
We got 5 weeks. We can do that.
And we love you guys.
info@relationshipreinvented.com.
Yep.
info@relationshipreinvented.com. Email us, and we'll work it out.
Absolutely. We love you guys. We will see you soon.